The morning of December 1st, 1948, was the first calm day of the South Australian summer. At about 6:30, a young couple named Mr. and Mrs. John Lyons were walking the esplanade above Somerton Beach in Adelaide. They were not looking for anything. They saw him from the path. He was wearing a brown double-breasted suit, neatly buttoned. His tie was carefully knotted. His shoes were polished. A half-smoked cigarette had fallen from his lips onto his collar. He looked like a tired man asleep. He was not asleep. It would be 3 or 4 minutes before either of them realized that. John Lyons walked down to the seawall. He spoke to the man. The man did not answer. He touched the man's shoulder. The man slid slightly. The man was dead. He carried no identification of any kind. The labels had been cut out of his clothes. This is the cold archive. Adelaide Coroner's Court took possession of the body that afternoon. He was 40 to 45 years old, 5'11", athletic build, strong, well-developed calf muscles. The pathologist later noted he had either been a long-distance walker or a dancer. Soft, well-manicured hands. He had not worked outdoors. He had not done manual labor. He had wedge-shaped teeth, a congenital trait, and he was missing 2 upper canines. He had a scar from an old appendectomy. His gray-flecked hair had been recently cut. His shoes had been recently polished. Whoever he had been, he had taken some care with his appearance the morning he came to Somerton Beach. The labels had been removed from his clothing with scissors. Every visible mark, the tailor's label inside the suit, the laundry mark on the shirt, the maker's tag on the tie, every one of them had been cut out. Only one mark survived, a small David Jones stamp on the inside of the shirt collar, which the cutter appeared to have missed. David Jones was, and is, an Australian department store. The shirt told them only that he had been in Australia recently. It did not tell them his name. His pockets held a half-empty packet of Army Club cigarettes. But inside the Army Club box, the cigarettes were a different brand. Kensitas, a box of Bryant and May matches, 2 combs, a packet of juicy fruit chewing gum, half-eaten, an unused second-class train ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach, a used bus ticket from a stop 1 mile inland. No money, no wallet, no identification. 2 weeks later, on December the 14th, Adelaide police checked the Adelaide railway station's lost luggage room. A brown leather suitcase had been left there on the morning of November 30th, the day before the body was found. The luggage tag on the suitcase, like the labels on the suit, had been cut off. Inside the suitcase, every label on every item of clothing had also been removed, except one. Sewn into the lining of a necktie in red thread was a single name. The name was T. Keane. Adelaide police searched every state's missing persons registry for a T. Keane. Australia had 4. None of them was missing. None of them had ever owned a tie with their name in it. The pathologist concluded that whoever had cut the labels off the suitcase had missed this one specifically because it was sewn into the lining where a cutter would not look. The autopsy ran on December 2nd. The toxicology was inconclusive. The man's stomach contained a half-digested pastry. No poison was identified, but the pathologist was certain the death had not been natural. On December 19th, 18 days after the body was found, an evidence officer in Adelaide CID went through the dead man's clothing one final time. He found a small fob pocket sewn by hand into the waistband of the trousers. Hand-stitched, not factory-made. Inside the hand-stitched pocket was a tightly rolled scrap of paper, about 3 centimeters by 4. They unrolled it. 2 words. TAMAM SHUD. The Persian phrase translates as "it is ended." It is the closing line of Edward FitzGerald's 1859 translation of the medieval Persian poet Omar Khayyam, the Rubaiyat. In 1948, the Rubaiyat was a best-selling pocketbook in the English-speaking world. Adelaide police needed to find the copy the scrap had been torn from. They appealed to the public in July 1949. Within a week, a man identified only as JB came forward. He had found a penguin Rubaiyat in the back seat of his unlocked Hillman Minx, parked on Jetty Road in the Adelaide suburb of Glenelg, sometime in late November or early December 1948. The car had been parked about 400 meters from the seawall where the body was found. The book's last page had been torn out. Adelaide CID brought the TAMAM SHUD scrap from the dead man's pocket and laid the torn edges together. They matched. Down to the fibers of the paper, they matched. The scrap had been torn from this book. Inside the back cover of the Rubaiyat, in faint pencil pressed lightly into the paper, were 5 lines of letters. The first line read ROETPMLIABO. The second line, struck through with a fine line as if cancelled, read AIAQC. The third read TTMTSAMSTGAB. The fourth, ABABD. The fifth, MTBIMPANETP. About 212 characters of pencil writing. No spaces, no punctuation.
The pattern of the letters does not match any cipher known to this office. We conclude that the most probable form is a one-time pad using a key book unknown to us. Without the key book, the text cannot be recovered.
Below the cipher, in the same pencil, was a telephone number. Adelaide CID called it. The number rang in a small cottage on Mosley Street, Glenelg, about 400 meters from where the body had been found. The number belonged to a young nurse named Jessica Ellen Thomson. She was 27 years old. She lived alone with her infant son, Robin. She had not been expecting a phone call. Detective Sergeant Lionel Lean visited Jessica Thomson on the afternoon of July 22, 1949. He showed her a plaster cast that had been made of the dead man's face. The accounts of that interview vary. 2 officers said she seemed about to faint and steadied herself against the wall. She herself later said she did not recognize him. She said she had once given a copy of the Rubaiyat to an Australian Army lieutenant named Alfred Boxall during the war. She did not know if the dead man was Boxall. Boxall was alive in Sydney. Adelaide CID found him within a week. He still had his Rubaiyat. Jessica had inscribed it in 1945 with one of Khayyam's quatrains. His copy was complete. The last page was intact. Boxall was eliminated as the Somerton man, but the connection to Jessica was not eliminated. Her phone number was in a different Rubaiyat, the one in the car. The book had still come to her doorstep. The inquest ran from December 1948 through June 1949. Coroner Thomas Cleland's verdict was that the cause of death was unknown but not natural, that the deceased had probably been poisoned with a digitalis-class compound, that the identity of the deceased was unknown, and that nothing in the available evidence would identify him further. The body was buried at West Terrace Cemetery in Adelaide. The stone read, "Here lies the unknown man who was found at Somerton Beach, 1st 1948. For 72 years, that was as far as it went." Derek Abbott is a professor of electrical and electronic engineering at the University of Adelaide. He began studying the Somerton man case in 1995 as a side interest. By 2009, he had become convinced that the man was almost certainly the biological father of Jessica Thomson's son Robin, who had been born in 1947. Robin had inherited a congenital condition called missing upper lateral incisors, the same dental signature the Somerton man had had. Robin Thomson died in 2009 of acute leukemia. Abbott contacted Robin's adult daughter, Rachel Egan, and married her in 2010. He spent the next 11 years lobbying for the exhumation of the Somerton man's body. South Australia police agreed in 2019 on the condition that Abbott's team would fund the forensic genetic genealogy work. The body was exhumed in May 2021. Hair preserved in the 1949 death mask plaster, which the pathologist had pressed against the Somerton man's hair after the autopsy, yielded enough mitochondrial DNA for the family tree search. Combined with the exhumed remains, the search began.
On the morning of July 26, 2022, we matched. The Somerton man is Charles Webb, an electrical engineer from the Melbourne suburb of Footscray. He had been missing since April 1947.
Charles Webb, born 1905, trained as a fitter and instrument maker, later an electrical engineer at a small Melbourne factory. Married Dorothy Robertson in 1941. The marriage was unhappy. By 1946, his wife had moved out of their Footscray home. By 1947, Webb had stopped paying rent on the workshop he kept. In April, he left Melbourne and was not heard from again until a body was found on a beach in Adelaide. Adelaide is approximately 700 kilometers west of Melbourne. Webb's estranged wife had family in Adelaide. Webb himself had no documented reason to travel there. He had no train ticket on his person. He had no friends in South Australia that the family or his employer knew of. He had carried no identification. He had cut the labels out of his clothes. He had carried a Persian poem in a pocket sewn by hand. The identification did not close the case. Why Webb traveled to Adelaide is not known. Why he removed the labels from his clothes is not known. Why he carried the TAMAM SHUD scrap in a hand-sewn pocket is not known. Whether he ever met Jessica Thomson, whether Robin Thomson was his son, is suggestive but not proven. The DNA work continues at the University of Adelaide.
And when, like her, O Saki, you shall pass among the guests star-scattered on the grass, and in your joyous errand reach the spot where I made one, turn down an empty glass.
The cipher has not been solved. It has been examined by the Australian Defence Signals Directorate in 1949, in 1978, and in 2009. It has been studied by professional cryptographers, by amateur cryptographers, by computational pattern matchers, by linguistic analysts. No solver has produced a plain text that any independent verifier has confirmed. The 212 characters sit on the inside back cover of a Penguin paperback in a South Australian police archive, unread. The labels cut from his clothes were not cut by him alone. The pocket was sewn by hand. The Rubaiyat was given to him by someone or taken by him from someone in the hours before he died. The decision to walk 700 kilometers to a beach in Adelaide was made for a reason we have not yet recovered. The man has a name, the case is not closed. Sunday's case. Next on the cold archive, a new file, a new instrument, a new unanswered question. Sunday 6 p.m. Eastern. See you then.